Hello and welcome back to Media and More with the Mediocre Modeler. Before we get to this week's episode of Ahsoka, last week I posed a question on my YouTube channel. Who should Ahsoka be training? Sabine or Jason? Let's go and see where the poll sits right now. Looks like at the moment Sabine is winning at 55%. Jason isn't too far behind at 45%. But what I find funny is Stewart's comment. Stewart says, Sabine clearly needs the help. Lesson 1, don't be so gullible. Now at the time, I thought this was just funny. But maybe this is foreshadowing. We'll talk about it later in the episode. I plan on leaving the poll up till the final episode of Ahsoka. So if you haven't had a chance to vote, here's your chance. Just go to the YouTube channel, click on Community, and the poll is right there. With that being said, let's get into it. The first thing we get to see is the Purrgil, the space whales, traveling through hyperspace. And the hyperspace area looks a little bit different. It's not your normal swirly type thing, and that was a good call. I like there being a difference between traveling within a galaxy and between galaxies. That's good call. I'm just gonna say that was a good call. But as heavy as the previous episode was with Ahsoka, I really didn't think we'd get any Ahsoka. But it's a nice little story. It starts with Ahsoka and Hu Yang in the ship, and the ship is inside the whale's mouth. And Hu Yang makes a joke just like traveling through hyperspace in the mouth of a whale. I now truly have done everything. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I just really like that character. They've done a really, really good job with Hu Yang. But Ahsoka confirms. I don't know if I said it last week or not, and I'm not saying I called it. I'm saying that I at least had the thought. I didn't think that Ahsoka had said anything to Sabine, to Hera, about Sabine going with them to the other galaxy willingly. And that just kind of proves my point that maybe Sabine is the poster child for too old to be trained. She has spent her entire life being whoever she is. And I don't know if they're trying to blame that off on being Mandalorian, that she's so stubborn. I don't know. But it's just not working. It's not working for me. It seems like everything she does is kind of self-serving. And I'm struggling with Sabine. I really am. And there will be more struggles. But Hu Yang has a pretty good point in saying, the Force doesn't always tell you what to do. It just kind of puts stuff in your path. And he says, well, maybe the Force, maybe the choice that Sabine made was, in her mind, the only choice she had. So it just kind of makes you wonder, what is her deal? What is her deal? I hope they said they were like brother and sister. At least that's what they're trying to portray. I hope it doesn't fall into something as simple as her holding a torch for Ezra. I don't know, but Ahsoka's really kind of broken up over the whole thing, and so Hu Yang had suggested, hey, I could tell you a story, and this is a little bit earlier, and she's like, no, I don't want a story. And then they end it with her not wanting to discuss Sabine anymore, and she says to Hu Yang, why don't you tell me a story? Your choice. And he says, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Now that is how you do a callback. I don't know who wrote it that way, but hey, bravo, you got it. Then we end up in the new galaxy. We open with Sabine on the enemy ship, and she's in a cell. And she's kind of angry about that, you know. Balin comes by, you see him in the little doorway, and she's like, I was hoping for a room with you. And they had a little, you know, chit-chat back and forth. You should use the time to reflect. I was trying to avoid that. And she's like, well, we had a deal. And he gives her this kind of a smirk, like, you fell for that? No, I feel like Balin, even beyond his mercenary job thing, he's got an ulterior motive as well. He's got something else going on, something that he's not telling us. Whether it does or doesn't have to do with Ezra or whatever, I'm not sure. But to Stuart's point, you shouldn't have been so gullible. She should have seen this one coming. They exit hyperspace, and you see Peridia, like kind of a gray world with a gray ring around it. And we find out that it's the home world of the Dathomiri. And she makes the comment that her species learned to travel with the whales across, you know, hyperspace a long time ago, before time was counted. And Balin also makes the comment that this is where the Purgle come to die. I mean, it's the end of the route, and then it's kind of like the elephant graveyard. And as you zoom in, all you see is all these bones just floating in space. So that ring is a ring of Purgle bones. Interesting, really gross, but interesting. As they're traveling towards the planet, they get a signal beacon, and Morgan's just like, Thrawn, let's go. They snatch up Sabine out of the holding cell, jump on the shuttle, and go down. The trip down, the planet just seems desolate. Not quite dead, but pretty dang close. You see these giant statues that are withered away and weathered by time. They look thousands of years old. And there's like a temple or something there. Land the ship, and there are 3 women dressed in red waiting for them. You know, they have the little balls, kind of like the map, in the little triangle. And I already know they're called the Witches of Dathomir, right? Morgan gets off the thing and runs up, and they're just like, "Oh, you honorous child of Dathomir." And we find out that they were sending her information in her dreams, so we know she wasn't crazy. And she's like, "Where's Thrawn? He'll be here in a minute." But that one right there smells like a Jedi. Take her away. Put her down in a cell. As they're taking her down to the cell, she's still hollering, "But we had a deal. We had a deal." Oh, Sabine. There's a conversation between Balin and Shen, and he's like, this place is a stuff of children's stories and nightmares. And we find out that he makes the statement that when I was not too much older than you, I lost everything. And she says, "Oh, at the Jedi Temple." And he kind of nods his head. And at that point, I noticed she's got a Jedi Padawan braid. And now I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you were being raised as a Sith, then why would you have the Padawan braid. I mean, so you can't say that he's completely abandoned everything. Like, he's got something else going on, and he says as much. He's just like, I want to fix this. I want to, you have the rise and fall of the Jedi and the rise and fall of the Empire and blah blah blah. I want to go back to the beginning and fix this. So now I'm thinking he just wants to start time over. I don't know. He, like I said, he's got his own agenda, and he's not telling anybody. But Sabine is down in her cell, and she's like, Ahsoka. I'm like, you messed that up already. You don't be calling Ahsoka now. But she decides, hey, let me see if I can use the Force and open the door. How about you try small? Just get the dang cuffs off, okay? That's all I'm at. Get the cuffs off. But you feel this rumbling, and she realizes it's not her. And you if you're going to introduce a major character like Thrawn, you should do it in the most grandiose way. And does this deliver? You get up to that top pillar, and you just see the Star Destroyer, the Chimera, come up from behind the pillar, and you're like, whoa, and this thing is beat up. And you think, it's just going to stop, and then a shuttle's going to come down. But no. They bring the Star Destroyer right over the top of the pillar and lower it right over it to where it's level with the docking, the launch bay. And inside, you see troops, and enter Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn looks right. He sounds right. And I'm pretty excited at this point. I know my buddy Tim is probably just hooping and hollering and jumping all over the place at this point. But I'm going to have to do another video about Thrawn himself, because for me, there's a difference between the book version of Thrawn, the Rebels version of Thrawn, and this version of Thrawn. Although Thrawn from Rebels does feel like this Thrawn. That's a discussion for another time. But he comes off, and he's saying to the Great Mothers. Shin describes them as war witches from the stories that I guess Balin had told her. And you have this gold guy. And I'm sure everyone thought, well, that's Ezra. It's not. He gives him a name. He has a name. It's Enoch. And I'm thinking at this point, Enoch has got to be of Dathomir, because I cannot see Thrawn with all his troops, and his troops are looking beat up. I don't know what they've been through, but it's been a lot. He wouldn't actually give a trooper a name. I'm sure they would go by their TK number. So there's something going on with this guy, and he's the captain of the guard. We find out that there was some kind of agreement between the Great Mothers and Thrawn. And so they're going to load a bunch of stuff out of the catacombs to take with them to get out of there. He finds out that Sabine's there, and he goes down there to talk to her. But before that happens, Morgan introduces Balin and Shin, and he says, she says, mercenaries, Balin, his apprentice, Shin Hati, and he's like, so that would make you General Balin Skull of the Jedi Order. They're nailing Thrawn, because Thrawn is a tactician. He knows everything about everyone. He's a very intelligent character. And he's like, I parted ways with the Jedi Order long ago. But I brought Sabine, and I thought she might be of use. They go down to talk to Sabine, and he's like, well, I'm just gonna cut you loose. Go ahead and find Ezra. And she's just like that, and just like, yep, just like that. Just know, though, when I'm gone, and you're gonna be trapped here, so whatever. Enoch takes her down, gives her this creature to ride, gives her some provisions, said, there you go, die well. Off she runs. Thrawn knows that Balin wants to go after as well, so they give them mounts. They go on out of there. Thrawn tells Morgan, look, I don't care what happens there. My goal is to get the heck out of here, so let's get this stuff loaded up. I have a suspicion, because the Witches of Dathomir, one of the things that they could do, I don't want this to be a spoiler, this is just what I'm thinking, but one of their powers was they could reanimate the dead. All the cylinders that they're bringing up from the catacombs are kind of coffin shaped. So my thought is the mothers want to bring their species, their people back to power. She's made a deal with Thrawn, and they're going to reanimate the fallen troopers once they get on the other side. As far as we know, all these troopers that are there are already dead, but that's just speculation by me, based on other background knowledge. But, you know, you get Sabine out there, and she's looking for Ezra. She stops, she gets attacked by some locals or whatever. She defeats him with the light. She shoots at him and then eventually defeats him with the lightsaber. But when she does that, her mount runs off, and this is where it starts to get cute. Because after she defeats him, she's walking, and this mount comes up, and he's like, "Doo-ba-doo." And she's like, "No, you abandoned me. I knew you were a coward." And he's like, you know, he's looking all sullen. And she's like, "Fine." And they keep going, and she jumps on. You gotta leave, and they go to another place. And just when I thought it couldn't get any cuter, it gets even cuter, because they find these other creatures that, you know, can hide like rocks, and, you know, she's trying to keep the mount from jumping them or whatever, and so she turns and she says, "Will you just calm down?" Well, they can see the logo on her shoulder pauldron, and they're like, "Well, look, I have the same thing." And other creatures come up, and they're like, "Come, follow me." So they get to the village, and she's walking around. She's like, "Well, I still need to find Ezra. This is all great and everything, but at least I've got a lead." And you pan around, and there's Ezra leaning against a streamline trailer, going, "Well, it took you long enough," you know. And, you know, they hug. Here's where I'm getting frustrated with Sabine again. He's like, "Oh, this is great that you found me, and I can't wait to get home. I've got so many questions." And he's like, "Well, can I just revel in the moment of finding you?" And I'm just like, "Okay, woman, he gave up everything so that his planet and you could survive. You owe him. You should be telling him everything he wants. Matter of fact, the first thing you should have done is say, 'Here's your lightsaber. I've been trained with it. You might want to help me build one.'" But If that's what she still wants, which I'm going to suspect that since he's alive, he gets his lightsaber back, that puts her without a weapon, she's no longer going to be trained. So, we get back to the we get back to Morgan and Thrawn, and the mothers are like, well, there's another problem, someone else is coming, and it's a Jedi. Well, who could this be? Because there's only one Jedi left out there. And she's like, Morgan's like, hey, they told me that they killed her. And Thrawn's like, well, you got that information from Balin. And Balin was a former Jedi, so we're just going to consider him flawed. So let's get this stuff loaded up and get the heck out of here. End episode. Oh. But hey, if a whale comes out of space heading towards the planet, just kill it without prejudice. Don't even waste any time. Just knock it out. End episode. And I will have to say, and this isn't going to be a very popular opinion, with the introduction of Thrawn, the finding of Ezra, and everything going on, I still kind of feel like nothing happened in this episode. After my first viewing of it, I was kind of disappointed. I was just like, oh, is that all? This is episode 6, so we've got 2 more episodes to make something happen. All I can say is they better be really good. I mean, last week's was good. This one was full of information. I still just feel like not a whole lot happened. So, we got 2 more. Final 2 points before we end. The one thing that has been bothering me through this whole thing is they kept saying that Thrawn was in exile. And if you look up the definition of exile, it's to be barred from one's native country, typically for political or punitive reasons. And I feel like that's not what happened.
When they glow like that,
they're about to jump into hyperspace. Ezra, get out of there right now. That's an order.
Hera, I have to see this through to the end.
Ezra, please, get out of there.
I can't do that. It's up to all of you now. And remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Based on that information, he wasn't exiled. He was abducted, kidnapped, seized, run off with, spirited away, captured, hijacked, snatched, and I might even say, shanghaied. So, you make the call. This is just how I see it. As the Chimera was coming over, you can see on the bottom of it, there's like dragons or stuff painted on the bottom of it. And my twisted brain thinking, God, it must have sucked to be the guy that had to go up there and paint that. And my immediate flash was to Red Dwarf, with Lister painting Red Dwarf on the outside of the ship. So, sci-fi, what are you going to do? So we'll see you next time for episode 7 of Media and More with the Mediocre Modeler.
Pew 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 pew.